Have you ever wanted to create custom AI-generated images tailored to your unique style? Maybe you have, but the thought of training an AI model with your own images or dataset seems like a daunting, out-of-reach task. In this video, we'll break down the process and show you how to easily fine-tune Flux, a state-of-the-art text-to-image generation model using your own images. With just a small set of sample images, you'll be able to teach the model to recognize and generate new concepts that perfectly match your desired styles, characters, or objects. Now, you're probably thinking this will involve writing a lot of code, but we've got a surprise for you. What if we told you that you can train an AI model like Flux and start generating your own unique images without writing a single line of code? It's true. We'll be using BuildShip, a low-code visual backend builder, to power our integration with Replicate, an incredibly easy way to run AI as an API. Pairing these two tools will make what seems like a complicated task feel like a walk in the park. But first, let's talk about Flux and why using it through Replicate is a great choice. Flux is a collection of text-to-image models released by Black Forest Labs, the creators of Stable Diffusion. It's open source and capable of generating high-quality, realistic images with a strong emphasis on detail. Now let's quickly look at 3 reasons why Flux is different from other image generation models. First, text accuracy. Unlike older models that often struggle with letters, Flux handles tricky words and repeated letters with ease. This makes it ideal for designs requiring precise text. For example, as can be seen in this worded cake generation. Secondly, complex compositions. Flux is exceptional at following detailed prompts, accurately placing elements within an image. For instance, given the prompt 3 wizards on a yellow table, each holding a sign. The left in black robes with AI, the middle in red with is, and the right in blue with cool. Flux nails it perfectly. And lastly, better hands. Hands are tough for AIs, but Flux delivers consistently, producing hands with the right number of fingers, outperforming other open text-to-image models. Now let's talk about Replicate. As previously mentioned, Replicate makes it super easy to run AI as an API. There's no need to hunt for powerful GPUs or worry about scaling. If you're a seasoned developer, you just write standard code with familiar APIs and only pay for what you use. On the other hand, if you're not a developer, pairing Replicate with BuildShip's low-code visual backend builder allows you to still use amazing AIs like Flux and others offered through Replicate in your own projects. And speaking of BuildShip, you're probably wondering to yourself, what will be the role of BuildShip in the process of training and generating custom images? And in just a few moments, we'll dive into a quick demo to clarify just this. But at a high-level overview, we'll have 3 BuildShip workflows. One for kickstarting the Flux training on your images, a second workflow that will be triggered whenever the training is completed, at which point we'll receive an email notification, and then finally an image generation workflow that we can use to test out our fine-tuned Flux model. Now for a short demo of the 3 workflows we'll be building for the remainder of this video. First up is our start training workflow. And as the name implies, we'll use this workflow to kickstart our Flux training on a set of given images. This workflow is using a pair of Replicate integration nodes, the first one for creating an empty model, and the second one for starting our Flux training using the created model. It's in our start training node that we can specify the images we want to use for training as a zip file. Here we're passing in a set of images to use from our BuildShip storage. If you're unfamiliar with BuildShip storage, then don't worry about it too much. Later in the video, we'll show you how you can upload your own images to BuildShip storage to use for training. Another important property of the start training node is the webhook input. Because training can take a number of minutes to complete, we're using a webhook passing the endpoint of a second BuildShip workflow that will be triggered whenever our training is completed. Before demoing that workflow, let's test this one first. Perfect. The final result of our workflow is the output of our start training node. In this, we can find useful information such as the training ID, the model we're using, the input images, and more. At this point, our Flux training is in progress, and now we need to wait. But we also need a way to get notified once our training is completed so we can start generating our personalized images. For that, we have a second BuildShip workflow that we're relying on, the training completed workflow. This workflow will be executed when our Flux training on Replicate is completed. The primary task of this workflow is to send a notification to our Gmail inbox. In that email, we're sending an email subject telling us that our Replicate training is completed. And in the email body, we're also including the model version. We'll need to use this model version in our image generation workflow to start generating images using our custom Flux train model. Switching over to my Gmail inbox, I've received an email here telling me that my Replicate training is complete. And in this email, I have the model version that I can then use in my final BuildShip workflow. Let's take a look at that workflow. The last workflow we'll be building in this video is our image generation workflow. Once our Flux image training is completed and we've received our model version in our Gmail inbox, we can now start generating our own unique images. This workflow uses the Replicate client node. We can use this node to run custom models from Replicate. Here we're using the model version that we received in our training completed email. An important part here is found in the input field. This is where we're passing our prompt. Here we're saying a portrait photo of a man, face focus only, long hair, horseshoe mustache. You can also specify which Flux model you want to use. Here we're just using dev. Now let's put this workflow to the test. And after a few seconds, our custom image is generated. Let's copy the URL, open it in a new tab, download it, and now we can preview it. Amazing. That looks really good. And just so you know, the images we used to train our custom Flux model for this demo and the images we'll use for the remainder of this video are a set of images from yours truly. We're hopeful that you found this demo as exciting as we did, because now it's time for us to get started and show you how you can set this up in your own BuildShip project. And by the end of this video, you'll have a powerful automation that you can use to train not just Flux, but any AI models on your own dataset and produce your very own custom generations. Here we are in BuildShip. Let's go to the templates library and we'll search for Flux. And here we'll find 3 Flux related templates. For now, we'll select the Flux Start Training template because that's the first thing we'll want to do. We'll start configuring this workflow in just a minute. Since we're expecting to have 3 workflows, it would be nice to organize them in a folder. In BuildShip, we can create a new folder. And let's just call it Flux. Create. And then we can drag our recently cloned template into this folder. Great. And now we can start configuring this workflow. The first Replicate node in this workflow will serve to create a new model, which will eventually serve as the destination for our fine-tuned weights. This will be an empty model at first, but eventually this will be where our trained model will live once the process is completed. The first thing we'll need to enter here is our Replicate API key. If you're following along this tutorial, we're assuming that you already have a Replicate account. In your Replicate dashboard, you can navigate to the API keys section, and then you can either copy or create a new API key. And then in BuildShip, you can securely save that API key as a secret by creating a brand new secret. But we already have our Replicate API key saved here, so we'll just select it. Next, we need to fill in the model owner. If you're using an organization account, then this will be the organization name. Or if you're just using a personal account, then this will just be your username. In our Replicate dashboard here, we can see that we're using an organization account called Rowie.io. So for our model owner, we'll enter Rowie.io. Next, we need to provide a unique name for our model. For this, we'll enter BuildShip Flux Demo. Then optionally, you can specify the visibility of your model. By default, we have it selected to private, but you can make it public if you want. We can leave the default hardware selected to GPU T4. And then here you can provide an optional description of your model. And that's all the setup we need to do for this node. After we've created a new model on Replicate, we can then kick off the training process by creating a new training run. Before we start setting up the start training node, let's take a brief moment to talk about how we're going to train Flux with our own images. Here we are on the official documentation for fine-tuning Flux with your own images. If you're a seasoned developer, you'll find a lot of useful information here pertaining to how you can train Flux with your own images. Luckily for us, since we're using BuildShip, we don't need to worry about any of the underlying code. The important thing for you to keep in mind here is that to facilitate training Flux with our own images, we'll be using a toolkit from Ostrich AI. With that in mind, let's head back to our workflow. Shifting our focus back to the start training node, the first thing we'll need to enter here is our Replicate API key. After that, the following three inputs for model owner, model name, and model version have all been populated by the template. As we just covered, we'll be using this AI toolkit to facilitate our Flux training. The organization name is Ostrich. That's what we're using here. And then the model name is Flux Dev LoRa Trainer. And then finally, we're just specifying here that we're using the latest model version. Next, we need to enter the destination where our trained model will reside. This will be in the format of the organization name / the model name. Our organization name is Rowie.io. And then our model name is BuildShip Flux Demo. And now we're at the important part of this node where we can specify the images we want to use for our Flux training. As mentioned in the beginning of the video, I'll be using these photos of myself for the training materials we'll use, but you can use any photos of your choice. Once you've gathered all your photos, you'll want to put them in a folder, and then you'll want to archive it. So I'll do that here. Compress. And this will give me a zip file. Now our images input is expecting a publicly accessible URL for this zip file. So we need a reliable location to store this zip file. Luckily for us, we're already using BuildShip. And because of that, there's no need for us to rely on any third-party services because we can just use BuildShip storage. Every BuildShip project comes with its own storage bucket. You can access that by going to your project settings, storage, and here you can upload and manage all your files. Let's create a new folder. We'll call it training. And then let's just search for that folder. And then in this folder, we'll upload our images zip file. Go to upload and then select that zip file. Once the file is uploaded, the last thing we need to do is generate a public URL for it. So we'll select get public URL, and then that will copy the public URL to our clipboard. Now we can just go back to our workflow, and for the images input, we can paste that URL. We're almost ready to test our workflow, but there's one final input we need to fill out. This is the webhook endpoint. Training a model on Replicate usually takes a number of minutes to complete. When you're creating a training run, you can optionally specify a webhook endpoint. This endpoint will be executed once the training is completed. This endpoint will also receive a payload that will contain useful metadata about the training, such as the model version identifier. In order for us to enter a webhook endpoint URL, we need to set up and deploy our second Flux workflow. To do that, we'll go back to the templates library and we'll search for Flux. And then we want to select the Flux training completed template. We'll set up this workflow and deploy it, at which point we'll have access to the workflow endpoint URL. And that endpoint URL will be used as our webhook endpoint. But first, we need to configure this send email node. Recall that once training is completed, we want to receive an email notification. And for sending the email, we're using a node from the Google Workspace integration group. This will use the Gmail API to send the email straight to our inbox. First, we need to enter the sender's email address. So we'll just say notifications@rowie.io and spell it correctly. Then we need to enter the receiver email address. So I'll just enter Luis@rowie.io. We can leave the email subject set to the default, which is your Replicate training is complete. If we take a look at the email message here, we can see that the important information entailed in this is the model version ID, which we'll need to know and use in our image generation workflow. And that's all the setup we need to do in this workflow. So let's deploy it. Our workflow is now deployed, and we can copy the endpoint URL. But let's take a step back here because we've unintentionally omitted an important detail. Regarding the send email node, in order for this node to function, you need to authenticate. In this case, I'm already authenticated, but let's take a look at what that process looks like if you're not already signed in. So I'll log out here, and then now we need to authenticate. You can select authenticate, select the account you want to receive and send emails from, in this case, Louis@Rowie.io, and I'm back authenticated. If it's the first time you're doing this, then you might need to go through a short confirmation phase, but then after that, you too should be authenticated and ready to start sending and receiving email notifications. Before we forget, let's move our newly cloned workflow into our Flux folder. We've already copied the workflow endpoint URL, so now we can go back to our start training workflow and we can paste this URL here. And that's all the setup we need to do for this workflow. Now for the moment of truth. Let's see if we can start our Flux training without any errors. To do this, we'll test our workflow. Perfect. We got it working on the first try. We get back a successful response from the Replicate API. This response contains useful metadata about the training we just created. To further verify this, we can go back to the Replicate dashboard and let's refresh. On the models page, at the bottom, we'll see our newly created model. If we scroll back to the top and switch to the trainings tab, we can see that we currently have a training in progress. Beautiful. So far, everything is working great. Now we just have to wait for the training to complete, at which point we should receive an email notification. We'll pause the video here and come back once our Flux training is completed. We're back and our training is finally completed. It took about 23 minutes to complete, so that's quite a while for just a handful of images. Of course, the greater your data set, the longer your training duration will take. That's not a problem for us because we're using webhooks. And with our training completed, that means that our training completed workflow should have been invoked. And we can verify this by inspecting the logs of this workflow. We can view the logs for this log message to console node, which is logging the entire request body. We can view the logs. And here we can see that our workflow has been executed. And if we're curious to see all the data that's included within the request body, we can expand this, go to requests, expand it, and then expand the body field. And let's just make this bigger. Here we can see we have the full replicate payload. We get the training ID, the model we're using, the model version. And then if we go into the output, we have two fields here. And the one that's important to us is the version. We'll be using this version identifier in our generate image workflow. But before we get to that workflow, since we verified that our training completed workflow has been executed, that means that we should have received an email in our inbox. So I'll switch over to Gmail. And at the top, we can see we have our new email notification. Your replicate training is completed. We can open this email and we can see that also included is the model version ID. Perfect. And with our training now completed, we're ready for the fun part where we can start generating our own unique images. Let's see that in action. We're excited for this final part, and hopefully you are too. In BuildShip, let's go to the templates library and search for Flux again. This time, we'll select the Flux Generate Image template. Before doing anything else, we'll move this workflow into our Flux folder. And as you can see, this workflow is pretty straightforward. There's only one node that we need to set up here, and this is the Replicate client node. This is a generic Replicate node that you can use to run any model hosted on Replicate. The first thing we'll do here is enter our Replicate API key. Next, we need to enter the ID of the model we want to run. To get this value, we can go back to our email, and then we can just copy the model version here. Then let's switch back to BuildShip and paste that value. Next, let's look at the input object we have set. By default, the template is using the original prompt we showcased at the beginning of the video. A portrait photo of a man, face focus only, long hair, horseshoe mustache. We'll leave this default prompt as is because we want to quickly test that our generation is working properly, and then we'll come back and change this prompt to get a different generation. Now let's test our workflow. And a short moment later, we're getting back a response from Replicate. Let's copy the URL and we'll open this in a new tab. We'll save it. And now let's preview it. Now that is super cool. As you can see, with just a small set of sample images, we're now able to teach the model, in this case Flux, to recognize and generate images that match our desired styles or characters. In this case, I uploaded a few photos of myself to use for training, and the result we're getting back here is looking pretty close to the face that's in those photos. Now let's give this one more try, this time using a different prompt. Let's bring up the Replicate client input, and this time I'm passing a much more detailed prompt. Remember, Flux works almost perfectly given more detailed prompts. This time we're saying a vibrant urban streetwear photo of a man in a white shirt. Editorial featuring an edgy, fashion-forward model in a dynamic action pose, adjusting quirky 90s, round sunglasses, etc. There's a lot more to this prompt, and we don't need to read through it all. Instead, we only care for the final output. So let's put our workflow to the test again. And here's our image URL. We'll copy it, open it in a new tab, we'll download it, and now let's preview it. Wow. I mean, how great is that? And it's pretty amazing how close the facial features are to those of the original training dataset. This is the power of fine-tuning Flux on your own images. With what you've learned today, you now have the power to unlock endless possibilities in AI-generated art. Whether you want to create custom avatars, unique marketing assets, or personalized visuals for your brand, integrating BuildShip's powerful low-code tooling with Replicate allows you to seamlessly train and deploy advanced models like Flux. The best part, you don't need to write a single line of code to bring your creative visions to life with this low-code stack. We can't wait to see the incredible creations you'll generate. So feel free to share them with us in our Discord community. If you have any feedback or suggestions for what you'd like to see us build next, drop them in the comments below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. That's all for this video. We'll see you in the next one.